Okay, welcome back everyone to The Boiling Point. This is episode 13, The Recovery. We have back with us Wise Joe, and he's going to talk a little bit about himself and his recovery. And
since he's
program. His what?
The NA program.
And the NA program.
That'll be like the basis of this.
This is going to be part one of what will be a part two conversation. Joe is going to talk about recovery and the NA program, and a little bit about himself, because he's a popular guest. A lot of people like him, so he wanted to talk about himself so that some of the people could get to know a little more about him. And then in part two of this episode arc, he will talk about himself a little bit more personally about his fight with addiction and stuff like that. But first, let's just stick with this one and the NA program and recovery. Wise Joe, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me on here, guy.
Yep. Hey, man, you're a popular guest. This is your third time on the episode now.
Could have made it more. It's just hard to get over here. Well,
everybody's busy.
Getting in the moods. Even when I do have time, it's like, and this touches back on like this entire topic, like, it's fucking addiction's more than just like an addiction. It's a fucking emotional state type thing. It's like a mental illness, and it contributes to every other part of your life, even when you're in recovery. So like even when I have time and I could make it over here to do it, sometimes I just don't feel like it. And it's not like I don't feel like it, because I do still want to do it. And I'm like, oh, it's like we really do a podcast, but I just like I can't get words out. So I would just be sitting here like quiet.
Sometimes you just got to take care of yourself. Is the chief point. I mean, even I have to do that sometimes. I mean, this is we've had 2 weeks now since I was able to post an episode. Some of it was due to other people's schedules not being able to come over when they thought they would. Some of it was me.
Technical difficulties.
Yes, we had technical difficulties when we tried to do the previous episode 13, but that never got posted. We were having technical difficulties. And then I was feeling under the weather for a couple days there last week as well. So, when it comes down to it, you got to take care of yourself first.
Yeah, true that. And as far as it goes with all that stuff and technical difficulties, if you like me and you like me on the podcast, know I do a little bit of shit behind the scenes to help John here with Gunner Attack. With
JD,
his fucking
but
shit,
that's fine.
I
go by all of them. All of them. You can call me John,
alias,
Gunner, JD. It's all the same. So
yeah. So like today, like I said, we're gonna start and we're gonna talk about the program, the Narcotics Anonymous program, and that's the program that I used to achieve the little bit of recovery that I have. Alcoholics Anonymous is good too. Just to be clear, neither program has any affiliation with this podcast or myself. Also, it's a separate entity. I'm just explaining how it helps people, what it is, how it works,
and both
how I've used it.
And both NA and AA is what you were saying are separate entities.
Yes, they are separate entities, and they are separate entities from us.
Yes, we are not affiliated with them, but
they don't sponsor us. We are not affiliated. This is just an explanation about myself and the program. Myself will come next. So right here we have the most important thing in the program. This is the basic text. In blah 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 in the Narcotics Anonymous program, it's basically the Bible. It's got from front to back the entire program in it basically, and it's hard to decipher and go through. It's a lot of information, so like that's why there's a bunch of other books, but there's a few other ones. But everything in those books are basically in this. So this is just like a compendium of the program.
Okay.
So, like what it is, I'm going to read it. I'm going to be doing a little bit of reading right out of this book just because the way they say it is the way it is. It comes out, they explain it. You got to think this is for fucking degenerates, scumbags, even fucking like rich, poor, everybody is susceptible to addiction, excuse me. Even though there's no excuse for me. But everybody's susceptible to addiction. But the book and the program is written at like a second grade reading level for a specific purpose. It's that way because so many people like start at a young age, they miss opportunities, don't pay attention, make different choices, poor choices, have a hard time. Like I don't want to call people illiterate, but they are in a sense. It's the word.
It's important to keep when you're recovering from addiction and stuff like that. It messes with your head.
Yeah,
it messes with your brain. Yeah. So being able to understand or comprehend something, especially right out of recovery, when you're fresh. Yes, that I imagine has got to be very difficult So
it's hard to collect your
keeping
thoughts
it simple.
and
It's not about it's not about anybody being stupid. It's just about being in a state where you couldn't understand something that's comprehensive. Exactly. So you keep it simple so that
keep it as simple as possible.
So that because when you stop with addiction, when you start in recovery, it's very hard at the beginning, I would imagine.
It's hard to even comprehend your own self. It's hard to collect your thoughts and have a conversation.
Absolutely.
And if you're in a program, different, a lot of programs practice the 12-step, but what I mean is if you're inpatient in a hospital type environment, recovery, rehab, inpatient rehab, you got fucking people constantly asking you about yourself and shit, always trying to build, you're trying to do it right away. And they give you 2 weeks, and then not even. They give you 2 days, and then it's right into working on yourself. And if you fucking don't, you're not gonna fucking recover.
Yep.
If you do, and if you just push through it and do it, force yourself to do it or force yourself to want to do it, that's the thing.
You're gonna read something? What are we gonna read?
Yeah, we're gonna read right out of here. So what the program is, right? That's right off of the top of the book. So Narcotics Anonymous is a non-profit fellowship or a society of men and women for whom drugs had become a major problem. They're recovering addicts who meet regularly to help each other stay clean. This is a program of complete abstinence. There is only one requirement for membership, the desire to stop using, and we suggest that you keep an open mind and give yourself a break. Our program is a set of principles written so simply that we can follow them in our daily lives, and the most important thing about them is that they work. And there's no strings attached. They're not affiliated with other organizations. As I said, they're not affiliated with us. There's no initiation fees, dues, pledges to sign, or promises to make. We're a group and are under no surveillance at any time. Anyone may join us regardless of age, race, sexual identity, creed, religion, or lack of religion. We're not interested in what or how much you used or how your connections were or who your connections were, what you've done in the past, how little you have, but only what you want to do about your problem and how we can help. And the newcomer is always the most important in any meeting, in any step of recovery, because we can only keep what we have by giving it away, which is, it builds off of, we have to fucking help the addict who's in a place where we once were to, remind ourselves that we're gonna fucking not go back there. It's right there, it's instantly oh shit, I've been there, I've felt that, and then the empathy comes back and it reminds you that you were once in that place, so you keep doing that, and it just keeps you in a constant state of awareness, basically.
Yeah. So part of the recovery then, if I can break it down even a little bit simpler, is what you're saying is that you helping other people too, get yourself to a position where you can then also return the favor to someone else and help someone else.
Yeah. So a big part of recovery, once you're fucking getting through it and you come to a point where you can help people, if you're not willing to help people, you're probably in a bad place. It's important to always be willing to help an addict who's suffering. But really, the program is non-inclusive. It's not just it doesn't just help people with drug problems. The only thing in the book about drugs really is the first step, admitting that you were powerless over your drug addiction and that your life had been unmanageable. The rest of the steps are literally just principles and guides to altering your state of perception, what you think about, how you react to situations, and basically your attitude to everyday life. And that really, I tell people who aren't addicts, who have fucking problems emotionally or have problems with depression or any type of really mental illness, I tell them dude, if you worked a 12-step, you'd fucking be way happier. You'd be able to process your emotions. You'd be able to go through life and not expect fucking things to be happening all the time. You're not going to be let down all the time. That's a big part of addiction too, is your expectations. You have these expectations of other people which are always unrealistic, regardless of what they are.
Yeah.
Even if they are realistic, it's not realistic because you can't know what other person's going to do. Even if you think you know, you don't.
You can't expect. Yeah,
and then when you do expect shit from people, then you're constantly let down. You build resentments over these expectations that have failed you, and then these resentments basically bring you back to a point of negative emotional state. You're angry, depressed,
You're absolutely
constantly on the edge because you're constantly expecting things and you're constantly being let down.
Yep.
So then you get back into this fucking emotional state of turmoil, which led you to addiction in the first place. Even at a young age, even if you fucking didn't understand what was happening, that constant state of expectation and, like, those resentments that you build as a child, that's what leads you essentially into using drugs, because you just want to change your emotional state. You want to change your perception, and the only way that you really know how, because you never developed those skills, is to alter it with a substance, because it's instant. Like, it's take it, altered, but it doesn't actually fix anything. It doesn't make you make you feel better for the moment, and that's the problem. So you have to feel better for the moment, always. Yeah. And then you're constantly feeling better for the moment. You're all constantly changing that perception. And that's where the problem comes in, and that becomes unmanageable. Some people are high-functioning drug addicts and alcoholics.
Absolutely, there are people,
I mean, fucking more power to them. I mean, some people, like, the thing is unmanageable. And they say complete abstinence from drugs, and if you're working the 12-step, you should be completely abstinent. Yeah. Like,
if you want to quit, I mean, that's what it's about. That's what the program's about. It's about quitting and making your life better without drugs or alcohol, and
makes your life manageable.
So if you want to, now there are, like you said, high-functioning people who are
addicts.
People who take drugs. Sure, if you want to call them addicts, fine.
Addicts, because even normal people have addiction in them.
Absolutely.
It's just that they're not.
I mean, we all do. If
drugs.
you drink coffee and soda every morning, you have an addiction. So
exactly. Cigarettes.
Cigarettes, absolutely. That's something I'm going to be trying to quit here in the next 2 to 3 weeks. I'll be making a real effort to just quit smoking.
Bro, I quit shooting up heroin, and I can't quit smoking cigarettes. So tell me about that. It's just
cigarettes
so readily available and just there all the time, and it's not like,
I think cigarettes, I think that's it. I think cigarettes, entirely. Yes, I do agree with that. I think cigarettes is different than drugs and alcohol. Well, maybe not even alcohol, but more drugs, because
it's more similar to alcohol, because you can just go to the store and buy it.
You can just go down the store, get a pack, and smoke them, and
you don't even realize it. Like, it's not like you're smoking them and getting high, you're just smoking them. Yeah. Like, you're just like, oh, okay, this is just my habit.
Yep, that's why I'm ready to, that's why I personally am trying to quit smoking. I'm just ready to be done with it. It costs too much. It affects your health. It makes you feel bad. I mean, it's not good. It's absolutely not good. It certainly could be argued that it's worse than some other drugs that are illegal.
Oh, 100%.
Now, of course, there's some drugs. I mean, Oregon now. Let's just talk for just a second about Oregon
real quick.
Yeah, let's talk about Oregon for a second.
All illicit and illegal drugs have been decriminalized.
Yep, in Oregon. Yep, that came from the election. They decriminalized everything. At the most, now you're going to get a fine.
Yeah, you get a fine that would be equivalent to a traffic ticket. Somewhere around $100.
Yeah.
And all of those proceeds that they get from, like, the medical marijuana and all that kind of stuff is going right back into recovery. So they're going to be building treatment centers, recovery centers. They're going to be building community centers for people. It'll go in, instead of going to court, you won't just go to fucking jail. You'll get offered, like, treatment. Either pay this fucking amount of money or go take treatment and get clean, and we won't fucking bother you.
Yeah, exactly.
Go fix yourself and it'll be fine. Yep. Here's the opportunity. We might be making you because of this, but you don't have to, like, pay for it. State governed then.
And I think
it's like, okay.
I think that's what's important about also what Oregon did, because Oregon did it. Oregon did it in the election. It was on the ballot for them to decriminalize everything, and that's where states' rights in this country are important. This is why they're important, because Oregon is going to try something. Oregon, as a state, decided it's going to try something that maybe not be good for every state or the whole country, but they're going to try it. If they can do it successfully and give models, other states may then follow suit, and then eventually it would get to the federal government. But that's the point of us being 50 states in a union. There are times when we are a union. We are the United States of America. But then there are times when we are 50 individual states with separate issues and separate things that they need.
Cultural differences. I mean, regional differences. We're talking about a country that's 3,000 miles from one side to the other. That's huge. And that's why we have 50 states in the union, so that states can decide for themselves, for their own communities, how to govern. And that's one thing that I'm for. I am for states' rights. You don't want the federal government deciding everything. Absolutely
you don't want that. And that's why people say that they should, the federal government should just legalize weed or decriminalize weed or make it, recreational for
should.
everybody. But that's not how it works. It should go the way it is going.
It's got to be in the majority of states.
2/3.
Yeah, it's got to be in the majority
2/3 of the states, and then it can be ratified by the federal government and
yep.
be put into law. That's how it should work, and that is how this country does work. That's how it's set up to operate.
And that's the only reason the federal government hasn't just come out and been like, it's legal, because that's not how it works, and they know it.
Yes, but the federal government is trying to do some things, depending on who may win the election. The federal government will be trying things that they shouldn't be trying to do because it's not their place to do it. That's a lot of what the election was about. But we're not talking about the election right now. I only wanted to talk about Oregon decriminalizing everything.
That's the scary thing about I hate using this term because it's almost offensive. Low information voters, dude. That's the same idea. Like, they just don't fucking know. You don't know how it works.
Yes, and unfortunately the media doesn't
find out.
Yeah, and the media doesn't help with that. You really have to dig in and do your own homework.
People don't just tell you how it works.
Yes.
Like, you learn about the country when you're going to school, but you don't learn exactly how it works. They don't tell you about delegation. Yeah. They don't tell you about how states are meant to run and operate on their own.
Yeah, and the mainstream media is not giving the appropriate coverage. They're not covering things the way that they should be, so you're also getting misinformed from that.
A lot of shit.
That as well.
Yeah.
But back to the program, Oregon did decriminalize everything. It's the first state to do so. It'll certainly be interesting to see how it plays out. I hope it works.
Should be a great example.
Yeah, I hope it does work out.
They're taking Canada's plan and they're using it.
Actually, I think they're making it a little bit better because Canada's not exactly perfect either.
No, Canada's not perfect, but they're using that as like a what's the word? We'll call it a blueprint.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we'll call it a blueprint. So they're using that as like a blueprint, and also like they're taking aspects from places like Switzerland and the Netherlands. It's like a conglomerate of all these ideas.
And I'd like to point out that what they're taking from all these things is the decriminalization of drugs, not their form of government. Okay.
Yes.
It's just about the decriminalization of drugs. It's about preventing. It's about stopping the war on drugs, or at least reshaping the war on drugs from incarceration
no longer
to
be
treatment.
A war. Yeah. It should be. It should be a war to attain recovery.
Well, that's what I'm saying by a war on drugs. I mean, it's going to shift. It's not going to be a war on drugs and a war on the people who
It's like a war on the people who use drugs. It should be a war on getting people off of the drugs.
Yes, they're going to shift it, and it's going to be more about recovery than it is going to be about penalizing or incarceration.
Yeah. All right, so let's get back to this right on here in this next chapter that I pull up here. It's Why Are We Here? So we'll bring it right back to that.
Yeah,
this is why we're here.
Why are we here? Okay, why are we here, Wise?
So we're here. This is why we're here. So, in the program, like before we come to the program, the whole purpose of this and why it was designed is because people's lives are unmanageable, and that's the biggest thing. Like we said, there are high functioning people with addiction, and they go on their lives and they live just fine.
More power to them.
Then there's the people who can't. There's that's the difference. Like, it's not necessarily the drugs even. It's the people that use them in the sense. It's their habits, their rituals, their emotional states, and basically their compulsive disorders. Like, if you are a drug addict, you've got a compulsion issue because you constantly keep buying fucking drugs and doing them. Yeah. Like, even when you don't want to, that's a fucking serious issue. Then you start doing things that you don't want to do, and that's where it begins. You're like, I don't want to be doing this, but we're going to go buy and do it anyways. And then you get to the point where, like, oh, I can't afford this, but I don't want to do that. I'm going to fucking do it anyways. And then you end up robbing people or burning shit to the ground.
Just falling down the hole.
You would go down the rabbit hole of what people are trying to avoid when it comes to addiction. And the whole purpose of this is to get out of that hole. It's to climb back up into society and be a functioning member of it. So, before you come, your life's unmanageable. The whole purpose of this is to make it manageable. You could not live or enjoy your life as other people do. Like, that's what I mean. Like, some people live just fine. They take drugs. They're good. Whereas if you're an addict, like, you can't. Like, you can't just go enjoy fucking hard drugs. You can't just do them from time to time. Yeah. I mean, you can once you develop the ability to fucking...
Assuming that you can, but some people don't.
Yeah, some people can never develop the ability to have self-control.
But that's part of getting clean is then you know about yourself. Yeah, exactly. Then you find out about yourself.
The program is about learning who you are and changing your perspective to live. Like, your attitude is important. can't have expectations, can't create resentments, but they happen anyways because you're a human being and that kind of
And
stuff.
we're all not
and this
perfect.
Is, exactly.
Yeah, we all have flaws.
This is about learning how to process them and like react a different way. And I was trying to explain this to our other brother, Josh. Shout out to Josh Edmonds.
Shout out Josh.
But I was trying to explain to him how like life sucks for everybody. Life's fucking garbage. But
it's hard.
About
it's a hard life.
It's how you react.
Yeah.
Like, the only thing that you really have control over is your reaction to everything. Like, you can't...
It is very true.
You can't control anything else, and if you expect shit to happen, you're just going to create a resentment. Like,
there's very little you can control.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do.
You control your own life. That's it. You can control yourself.
You can make plans, and then follow through those plans, but you can't expect... the result.
Those plans are going to be
you can't plan the result, but you can make the plans and then follow through them. And then that comes back to making the expectation. Don't make an expectation for plans that, like, you don't want to make plans of the result.
Yep.
That's an expectation.
Let's use the podcast and me as a comparison there. I created this podcast. You would think that if someone creates a podcast, the expectation is that someday it'll get picked up, you'll make money, that's your living. That is not why I created this podcast. If it happens, that's wonderful. That would be so great. However, even if I never get picked up or never make any money from the podcast, I'm going to continue doing the podcast. I'm going to continue exercising my First Amendment. Yeah, I'm going to continue to show people out in the world that people can have conversations, whether they agree or disagree. And that's what this show has been about. Even though we cover a bunch of different topics, entertainment, politics, what's happening in the world, we cover a wide range. But it's about people having disagreements, and that's what the whole show's about. The expectations are high. I mean, I could expect to, make it to Spotify and have my own show, just like Joe Rogan does, you know what I mean, and get a big fat check. But that's not what I'm expecting. That's not part of my expectations. If I were to be expecting that, then every time eventually I'm going to get resentment and get angry that it hasn't happened yet. And that's not how you can go through life. Like you said, about expectations. You can't expect things. You can make the plans and follow through with them and do your best for the outcome. That's all you can do.
Exactly. Like, all you can do is follow through with, like, your plan. You can hope, but don't expect.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a fine line, expect and hope, certainly. But it is an important line because when you expect things and then you get let down, you get disappointed, and you can become depressed. And then you fall down. But if you don't expect those things, if you just have hopes, then you just hope for them. If they happen, that's great, and if not, then you've still done your plan and executed your plan to the best of your ability. That's all anybody can do.
Exactly. So
another page.
Yep, we're gonna keep moving on here. So like that's why we're here. The whole purpose is like use drugs to cover up your feelings, basically, or to avoid something. And it was constant, and you had to keep doing it because you had no other way to cope with your life, cope with your situations in life. So, like, you admit you're powerless over your addiction, and your life is unmanageable. That's the reason one. Show up. Fucking just show up. Find a meeting. Go Narcotics Anonymous online. They have websites, like a bunch of different websites, but the main Narcotics Anonymous website has a listing of all meetings throughout the entire country. So if you're in your area, you just go in, type your fucking zip code in.
And it'll show you.
It'll show you where meetings are around you.
Yep.
Now, people aren't necessarily responsible for their disease in a sense, like, because you didn't know it was not necessarily your idea to do something sometimes, but you are responsible for your recovery. So.
Yeah.
Explaining how you're not responsible for your disease is debatable, honestly. I don't necessarily agree with it, but
well, I mean,
you are
like you said, it's by individual. It's by individual.
It's case by case basis.
Yeah, you absolutely can't say that it falls to everybody. Some people do have just problems, and that's why it happened. Other people make conscious choices to end up going down the rabbit hole, and that's where the difference is. It all depends on how it started and how it began manifesting itself. So yes, in some respects, some people probably have some personal responsibility to, that they have to take on themselves. Other people are certainly just, it's a sickness, and that's the way it is. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a disease. you got a disease, you're not necessarily responsible for having a disease, but you are
But
responsible for your recovery. You're responsible
or your management
to not,
of it.
and to not follow through and act on that disease. And when it comes to recovery, like, you're responsible for it. So if you want it, you've got to show up. You've got to do it.
Yeah.
You've got to follow through. Even if you don't like to fucking read, have somebody read it to you. I'm sure they have fucking...
They probably have audiobooks.
They probably have audiobooks for all of it. I
Yeah.
guarantee it. I'm not positive about that. And if they don't, they probably should. But it's a selfish program, too. You show up, and for the beginning of it, you got to be selfish. It's got to be about you, and you've got to follow through. Like, it's all about you.
Yeah.
Until you come to the point where you're helping... Even when you come to the point where you're helping other addicts, it's still about you, because you can't keep what you have unless you give it away. So in the whole way through it, it's selfish. You're doing it to help you. When you help another addict, it's to remind you that's the place where you've been. You don't want to be there. That's for you.
Yeah.
Even though it benefits
You're
them,
talking
it helps you.
you're talking about an action that helps somebody else.
Yes,
but you're doing it not necessarily for them. You're doing it for yourself because that's what you need to do in your recovery.
Exactly. And you know, like, people, places, things is something they talk about a lot. Like, replacing them or changing them is a large part of your recovery. Altering where you are, the people that you're around, the things that you're doing. So, people, places, and things, you can't blame them, but you can change them. So you can't be like, oh, all this stuff is the reason, but you can definitely change it because it probably doesn't help.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Hang out with different people. Don't go to the same places.
Yeah.
Stop fucking using drugs.
Yeah.
It's best to your ability. What was that last bit excerpt there? Yeah. Okay. So the disease can only be arrested through abstinence, like I said. And initially, when you come into the program, they're gonna want you to not do anything at all. And like I have 4 years, 3 months, 9 days, no heroin. But
that's great.
I had a year and 3 months without drinking any alcohol, but I wasn't not drinking alcohol because I had a fucking problem drinking alcohol. I have self-control.
Yeah.
I had a problem using dope, and I just had to keep doing it and fueling it. And I had to keep changing my emotional state and changing my feelings. And then I came to a point where I learned to cope with things using, like, emotional tools and conversation, reaching out to support groups and stuff like that. And I didn't go have a drink, like, I didn't just, like, go out and have a drink, like, oh my god, I've got a relapse. Like, I made a conscious decision, like, I'm gonna do this because I'm capable. I know that I can have a drink today and be fine tomorrow. I know I can have one drink tonight and not get plastered. Like, I can control myself.
Yeah.
And, like, that took a lot of practice. But in the beginning, I couldn't do anything.
Oh, yeah.
Because if I got drunk, it was like to
pulling you
change
back
my
in.
emotional state.
Yeah.
It was like, all right, I got to drink because I got to get that feeling. Whereas, like, I was like, you know what? I'm going to have a drink because we're having fun. And
you're drinking out with your friends.
I'm going to be out here. I'm going to have fun. Like, I'm not doing this socially to fuck myself up.
Yeah.
Like, there comes to a point, and everybody's different. Some addicts can never use any kind of drugs again.
Yeah.
I know, like, some people in my support group are the same way. A friend of mine that I went to school with that I just started talking to, she has, like, 2 years or so clean. She's similar to me. Like, she smokes pot. She'll have a drink every once in a while. And that comes down to another thing where, like, marijuana is a drug, but it's also a medication, and it's also very. It's been controversial for many years.
Weed is as much of a drug as Vicodin is. So if you're in recovery and you're capable of taking Vicodin and not ending up down the rabbit hole,
exactly, shooting up dope the next day.
Then it's okay. Just like if you can smoke weed and you don't end up back down the rabbit hole, then it doesn't matter. Or if you have a drink. You can have a drink and you don't end up back down the rabbit hole, or if it doesn't become a problem where you're using it to alter your mindset, then you know, as long as you have control over it, then that's the difference between...
Control's a touchy thing, because, like I said, the only thing you have control over is your reaction. So you can't, like, have a drink and then react adversely and go fucking shoot up. Like, it's all about your reaction. You can't control, like, you can't be like, oh, I can only control myself, but you can. That's the only control you have is of yourself.
Yeah.
So if you can learn to obtain that ability to cope with your emotional state and not be forced to go use your
self-control.
go use your drug that you know is gonna fucking click. You know it's just gonna fucking cover it up. You can alter your mindset naturally through a state of meditation, through a state of conversation, and
self-reflection.
Self-reflection. Well, that comes in with like meditation and that kind of shit, and that's a big part of the program too. Every morning there's another book, and it's a whole nother like portion of recovery. It's called Just for Today, where it references a portion of the basic text. Like I said, everything comes back to the basic text. And I actually have the chapter here for Just for Today. We'll flip forward to that real quick. So the Just for Today is like living the program. You wake up in the morning or whatever time you have, and there's like a little excerpt, like I said. So for example, it's like, tell yourself, like, just for today, my thoughts will be on my recovery, living and enjoying life without the use of drugs. So it's like one step at a time kind of deal, baby steps.
Yeah.
Like, it's just for today. So at the beginning, like, people who are really fucking in the throes of their addiction, it's what they think about all the time. If they're not high and they're not using, even if they are high and they have drugs, they're thinking like, all right, I'm gonna have to get more of this when I'm done with it. Like, so
yeah,
it's a constant state of thinking like, oh, I want that, gonna have to get that, let me plan on getting that. Even though I got it, I need to fucking make sure that I can have it again. So it's about just not using for 30 seconds. It's about not using for a minute, and then 5 minutes, like take an hour, I'm not going to use for this hour. And then it's about this day, and you get to the point where it's just today, I'm not going to use drugs. And then that day turns into another day, and then that day turns into another day. And then before you know it, you have 30 days clean, and
then you're well on your way to,
and you're on your way
to recovering.
Well,
because even 30 days, you're not necessarily recovered.
No.
Then it takes some time.
You're never really recovered in a sense.
No,
like you're always in a state of working on yourself.
Yeah.
So those first 90 days actually, like, they're the hardest days to not use drugs. I mean, the first 2 weeks is fucking ridiculous. Like, you're sick, you're fucking throwing up, whatever drugs you're on, you're freaking out, your psychotic breaks, seizures, fucking hallucinations, crazy shit.
Depending on what you're on.
Yeah, depending on what you're on and how bad it is. So you just come in and it's just for today. Don't use for today. And those first 90 days, like I said, they recommend you go to a meeting every single day for the first 90 days. That's like, if you want to work the program, that's what they're going to expect of you. A meeting every day, first 90 days. Start learning the program. Start doing the things they're asking you to do. Take suggestions. Ask people with recovery time. Tell them about your situation or your story. They can then empathize with you and then give you the suggestions or tell you what they did and stuff like that. Because every addict in there, someone has a similar story to yours or a situation like exactly the same. They can tell you what they did and how they got around it. And you don't want to go up and ask somebody with like fucking 45 days, like, hey dude, I'm having this problem. What did you do when this happened? I mean, you can if that person did make the right choices to like cope with it, but your best bet is to find somebody who has time. Like, you find a sponsor who has time, and that's the person you talk to and reflect. They can help you out with suggestions and stuff like that. So we're going to get into what the steps actually are, because once you get into it and you start following the program, going to meetings, that's not just it. You're not just there talking and sharing and listening. That is a large portion of it, but then you get into the actual work. The actual work of working on yourself comes whenever you start working the 12 steps. And there's a step working guide that helps you through it. Like I said, basic text has all the information in it, but that guide is gonna go through bullet points and ask you things about yourself. It's gonna make you think about things you don't want to think about, but you just have to do it because that's how you do it. You have to face your fears, your feelings, and you basically categorize your entire life through these steps and learn yourself. You learn yourself, and then you learn through these spiritual principles and these aspects to controlling your emotions. And basically, like, because when I say controlling your emotions, I don't mean like you don't fucking react and like get angry or feel bad or have depression. It's about like when you have those things or those are happening, your reaction to them. How am I gonna fucking handle this? And you can't think, like, most people don't think that either. Like, so something happens and you like, bam, you react. And the program allows you to like have this space. The meditation and the thinking allows you to get to this point where like something happens, and before the click, you just pause. So something happens, and a big part of it is just stopping for a second.
Yeah, absolutely.
Being aware of it and taking it in, just being like,
I think that's...
my first reaction isn't always accurate. It's never accurate usually. It
Yeah.
comes through like a conveyor belt of thoughts. So like your first thought usually, bam, that's the one you think of, that's how you react. But if you pause, you let that conveyor belt roll, and then you get to the point where you're like, oh, that's what it's about.
Yep.
Okay. I'm not fucking flipping out over this. I don't need to.
That's a very interesting point that you just brought up right there, because I think that's something that probably everybody could do in their normal lives, whether they're an addict or not.
And that's what I meant by when I said this program doesn't just work for people who are addicts. The program works for people who have emotional problems.
I think anybody. I think if
Literally
you're out there in the world,
anyone.
and I think that's an important lesson for everybody, though, to not immediately react when you hear or see something. It's not about the immediate reaction. You should take some time to think. I mean, at least a few moments, even. You know what I mean? Not the immediate reaction. Take a few moments. Think about how you should react, or how you are supposed to react. You know what I mean? What does the situation warrant? I think that's an important lesson that everybody should take. Not just for people who are addicts, because a lot of people instantly react. I mean, we live in a 24-hour news cycle where you don't have time to process any information.
Exactly.
By the time you've processed information, the information has changed, or they're reporting different information. So I think that's a lesson that could go even further than just that. That's something for everybody, I think.
Okay, so yeah, like I said, we're going to get on what these steps actually are. There was a little excerpt that I was going to look for. Actually literally says that, like, before, like, when a situation happens, before you freak out, just pause, stop, think about it, then react.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's worded a little more eloquently than I said it, but it's the same idea.
Yeah.
So each step has its own principle behind it, has its own spiritual principle that will, like, it helps you emotionally. So, like I said before, the only step that refers to drugs is the first one, and realistically you could take the word drugs out of that and apply it to any person's life. Your life becomes unmanageable because of any reason. You could follow these steps and it will bring you to a place that you will be very fucking comfortable. You'll be a lot happier. And people get confused because it talks about God and higher power a lot. It doesn't really talk about God. It says your higher power, and that's a personal thing, not a program thing. It was originally based off of Christian values because the people who made it were Christian. But they also realized that not everybody was, but everybody was susceptible to addiction. Yeah. So they changed it. They changed it from your higher power,
Christianity, from following God to following whatever
your belief is.
Yes, I would like to point out, even though I have never been in the program, and I know a lot of people that have been in the program, but to me, God being the higher power is probably going to be better for you than anything else that you decide is your higher power, just because God is involved in your life, whether you can choose to accept it or not. You can choose to accept it or not, but He is. Exactly. And I think accepting Him as your higher power is going to be the best way for your life in general, not just for addiction, but just for your life in general.
That's true.
That's just my own personal opinion.
See, the higher power thing is it's a personal thing. So your higher power is literally anything greater than you. Yeah. The fucking political system in this country could be your higher power. I don't suggest that at all. But literally anything that's greater than you, like has a greater power than you, can be your higher power. You need something to put your faith into. You need to have and develop faith.
How important! That's so interesting. How that faith is so important to recovery. How about that? That's
well, you gotta believe. Also, you have to believe that you're not gonna fucking. You have to believe in yourself.
Yeah,
you have to start to believe in yourself.
That's what I'm saying, though. Belief in a general sense.
But you start to believe in yourself by believing in something that's greater than you. And then following your own. Excellent. Like, basically your own thought process. That thing talking to you in your mind, the subconscious reality that is making you think.
Absolutely.
That's what you learn to love. Yeah. So, like I said, the first step's the only one talks about drugs. But step one is that we admitted we were powerless over our addiction, and our lives had become unmanageable. So, that didn't even say anything about drugs, to be honest.
No.
So, I could have swore it said we were powerless over our addiction, and couldn't stop using drugs. But anyways, that's regardless. The spiritual principle on step 1 is honesty. So you have to be honest with yourself. You have to admit that you're fucked up, admit that your life is unmanageable, and then follow through with attending the program.
Yep.
Then you develop hope. You start to get hope after you get to the program. You see that there are people who are recovering. There's people with time. It's possible.
Yeah.
It's possible. You can do it. You can see that by going to the program and being there. And you might see people with clean time and think, no way, but then you attend your 90 days worth of programs and you get to know them and you see them there fucking all the time.
Yeah.
And then you realize, like, holy shit, like, these people are doing it.
It's about developing a community.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also important to know that not everybody in the program is working the program well. Just because they're there and have clean time doesn't mean you want to fucking listen to them. So you need to find people who are living the spiritual principles as well as talking about them. Some people don't talk about them and just live them. That's the best sponsor to have. Somebody who just lives the program.
Yes.
Doesn't care to talk about it, but who was willing to share their recovery.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, so you develop hope, and this part is where you find that higher power. So you come to believe that a power greater than yourself can restore you to sanity. And it says us because it's a program about community, but we're gonna do this more personally because, I mean, the next episode is gonna be about me. So
yeah,
like once you develop that hope, you find that you see people, it's possible, and you develop like this idea that something greater than you is capable of like leading you along the way. Like you can't control something greater than you, so whatever is going to happen is going to happen. You're going to learn acceptance, and when it comes to acceptance, that comes towards the end, but you'll start developing it as you're working the steps. The next step is where you develop faith in said higher power. So you have a hope, see people, you think like, I can do it, maybe this power greater than me can lead me there.
Yeah.
Then you develop faith in that higher power. You make a decision to turn over your will and your life to the care of God as you understood him, or the power that you developed as you understood it. Really, God works well.
Yes,
God works well.
Yes, he does. God works very well.
Yeah. Step 4 is about courage. And you make a searching and fearless moral inventory of yourself. And by that, it's a collection and this table of everything you've done to people or done to yourself or thought negatively or thought positively. Or like an inventory is basically like a self-reflection on like a large scale. You can do a day-to-day inventory. A lot of people do. They come home, they like think about like, oh, this is what I did today. This is how I felt about it. This is how I reacted. And that's what your inventory is. Except in that step, this is about your life. So you're going back as far as you can remember and taking inventory for everything that you've experienced. That way you can see where you reacted adversely, why you fucking did what you did. Yeah. Like, what was the situation and what was the trigger. Yeah. And that takes courage. Like, certainly, to look at that shit and see the things that you did, why you did them, that's...
Regret is something dark. That can lead you down the rabbit hole.
Exactly. And that's where your sponsor comes in to tell you, like, it's okay. We've all fucked up. I'm here. I'm fucking way worse than you. Yeah. Like, and that helped me a lot when I was going through it. Like, my sponsor is a fucking degenerate. Like, way worse than I ever was. Like, yeah. Shit. A little coffee. Yeah. Coffee. Product placement on the fucking...
If I had something to say while you were taking a sip of that, I would have filled in the space, but I didn't have anything at that moment.
It's alright. It's alright. So then we move on. Step 5 is that we admitted to God and ourselves and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. So once you develop this inventory, and that's like I said, your sponsor comes in. Yeah. It's best to do both of these steps at the same time with your sponsor, or whoever the fuck you're working the shit with. Yeah. You're not supposed to do it alone, but you can. If you're brave, you can do it. Yeah. It's fucking, it's possible.
It's better to have somebody with you.
Yeah, it's not safe for you. If you're an addict in early recovery, it's absolutely not safe for you to do these steps on your own. Yeah. You could, and you can, but there's a good chance that you're fucking going back out. As soon as you start getting deep into the fucking inventory, doing all that stuff, you're going, see ya. Because right away you're already feeling those feelings, and you don't know how to process them, you don't know how to cope with them or deal with them, so what you do is you do what you know how to do. Get high. And that's what you know. Yep. So, like, you take that, and that's step. The spiritual principle behind that is integrity. Like, you gotta have integrity. You gotta fucking follow through and do it, talk about it, and you have to admit it, basically. Like, it's about vocalizing everything that you've done. Like, making it more than just thoughts in your mind, making it a reality. Somebody else is aware, and that takes weight off you. Like, when you do that, that person takes that weight. And it's not like you're burdening them with that weight because you didn't really affect them. They just take it in and fucking give you advice and shit based off their empathy and make you feel better about it because that weight that you just gave them just fucking dropped off the world. They didn't hold that weight. And that's an important thing about getting a sponsor, someone that you don't know usually too. It's important. Make sure your sponsor is the same gender as you. That's important.
Yes, it is.
Because there's a lot of fucking dudes in the program who are like picking up newcomer girls, trying to be their sponsors, and then want to bang them, and then they both go out. Or the girl doesn't really get any fucking spiritual principles or any work done, and she goes back out, or vice versa.
Yep.
Usually it's a dude on a chick. But it does happen the other way sometimes. So then you get to your willingness, and you are entirely ready to have God remove all of these defects of character, which sounds pretty simple, but it's not. So you find out your defects through your inventory, then...
Well, it's easy to pray to God, but it's not so easy to get those defects
lifted.
Yes,
exactly.
Because God's just not going to do it for you. You're going to have to
put in
some
you do the work.
Yeah,
you have to do the work, and it's based off your inventory. So you see your character defects based off of the things that you've done to people and the way you've reacted to things, whether it's positive or negative. You learn it from your inventory. And again, your sponsor is really important in these middle steps. Like, if he's not there or she's not there, and you're not able to vocalize it and deal with it in like a conversational setting, then it doesn't really work.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're fucking crazy and you got more than one person in your head,
you
could do it.
You should be seeing somebody.
Well, I mean, you should, but
you should be seeing somebody else then at that point.
Well, I mean, you can have a conversation with that person. Like, if it's a legitimate other fucking... like,
I don't know that that's a legitimate other person.
Oh,
if
it
you
totally
have
is.
someone else in your head, so... I don't think you're a psychiatrist.
No, absolutely not. I'm a doctor in pretend.
In pretend, that's important.
Dr. Bombs.
Dr. Bombs. Dr. Bombs, FMD. That's fake medical degree.
Sir, thank you. All right, so once you have the willingness to like basically confront your character defects, which is even harder than asking to remove them, you gain humility, and this is where you're able to start shedding some of these character defects, because a lot of it has to do with being humble. Like, you think you deserve shit, you think like you expect stuff all the time, and with humility and being humble, that's not what that is. So being humble basically just means that you don't mean shit.
Humbling yourself
is being aware that you don't mean squat. Like,
something that's
everybody
important for
equal.
Christians to do also is to humble themselves before the Lord.
Yeah, bitch, be humble. Sit down.
Yeah.
Kendrick Lamar.
You don't know. Yeah, that's what being humble is. You don't know.
Yeah, sit down.
It's
you don't fucking know.
Be
you
quiet.
Ain't shit.
You don't know.
I ain't shit. We're all just the same.
Yep.
Like, it's about accepting that you're not greater than anybody else. There's the only thing greater than you is your higher power, which you should be having faith in by this point in the steps. So once you have humility, like you then humbly ask him to remove your shortcomings, which is different than your character defects. Because your character defect is basically like your bad traits, things that you do, like the way you react to stuff. Whereas your shortcomings is like where you fall short in the sense of not going out, like your own mindset stopping you from doing things or telling you to do things. Whereas your character defects is just your fucking natural reaction to shit. Shortcomings is something that's like, oh, I'd really like to do that. Like I said earlier, like with my depression and shit, like I sometimes have time to come over to the podcast and I want to, but I can't. And that's a shortcoming where it's like I'm aware and want to do it. My mind is just telling me, like, my mind's telling me that I want to do it, where the subconscious is like, I can't have a conversation. Like, I just can't talk about shit very long. And that's the difference, really. I mean, it's kind of complicated, but as you go through the steps in the step working guide, it explains it a lot more thoroughly. Just getting over, like, the basic conglomerate, like, of what the fuck this is. Then you come up to your next step, which is discipline and action, is the spiritual principle. Which step 8, you make a list of all persons you had harmed, and you became willing to make amends to them all. Which again, this is like really hard shit to actually fucking, like, you go out into the world and start fucking doing this stuff, you're gonna be fucking, you're really feeling it. Like,
yeah,
it gets dark, it gets bright, you're fucking feeling all these emotions, and it's way intense because you're not fucking on drugs. Yeah, like when you come off of drugs and your neurons and your fucking brain receptors start firing again, like positively, you can feel everything so much stronger. It's really intense. And really working the steps, you should start working them. But at this point, like, if you're on step 8 and you haven't finished your fucking 90 days of, like, your 90 days of program work, like, just attending meetings for 90 days, and you're already at step 8, you fucking rushed through that shit. You didn't do it thorough enough.
Yeah.
Unless you're, like, fucking 13 years old, and you only have 13 years, or you only have, like,
a
6 years.
Yeah,
2 or 3 years worth of shit to go over and analyze. You didn't fucking do it right.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't make it to step 8 until I had, like, 10 months clean, I think. So, like, everybody's different. People will work through it faster. Some people have more time to work on it than others. Some people are more willing to.
There's a lot of different factors at play with
all the steps. I think it took me 11 months to finish my first round of steps. But it was hard.
Yeah,
and I wasn't able to fucking go out and, like, I wasn't able to go out. There was still amends and shit that I still had to make. So I wasn't able to, like, actually complete my first round of steps completely until I had, like, a year and 4 months until I came back to Pennsylvania from California. So, like, there was stuff that I still had to wrap up. And then again, still, your steps are never over. And we'll get into that after we go into this, because we'll talk about relapse and how it's not part of everyone's recovery, but is part of recovery.
What step number are we on now?
We're on step 9, which is about forgiveness. So step 8, you make this list, and you become willing to make amends to them all, right? You become willing. That's a key word. You become willing. And now in step 9, you develop forgiveness. You made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. So this is the step where you take action, where you forgive the people, you forgive yourself in the process. Forgiving yourself is a large portion of recovery, which doesn't really happen all the time. I mean,
I'm sure.
Like, I know personally that, like, that's one of my biggest issues still, is that, like, I don't forgive myself for shit. Like, the only resentments that I hold now are against myself.
Which can still be just as dangerous, though.
Which is just as dangerous, if not more dangerous.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's hard to cope with the things that are about you.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to cope with something that you did to someone else than it is to deal with the things you did to yourself.
Yeah.
Or things that had happened to you.
Absolutely.
So then we move on to step 10, which is acceptance. We continue to take personal inventory when we were wrong. Oh, shit. We continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. And this was something I developed really quick, actually, before I even worked the steps, because I tried working it before, where it's like, I'd be having a conversation with somebody and just say something that I knew was fucked up. Like, that's just me. I just fucking, fuck you. And then right away, I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, I didn't mean to fucking come at you like that. It made me feel, like, so much more mature, like, right away, where I was like, instead of just being like, you know what, fuck you.
Yeah.
And just, like, turning away and not talking, where then I would have the situation where I'd do something or say something, and right away I'm like, I felt bad right away.
Yeah.
Like, instead of, like, because I wasn't on drugs, I could feel all my emotions, so, like, right away it happens, and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like,
yeah.
Damn. And it was, like, a real thing. It wasn't just like, oh, fuck you, but sorry. It was like a real reaction where, like, I would say it.
That's part of it. That goes
pause.
back to the reaction.
I would say it and pause and be like, oh, wow, that was fucked up.
Yep.
And be like, damn, I shouldn't have done that.
Yep,
that was mean.
That goes back to the reaction part of it and how you need to think before you speak. That's something everybody should do.
Pause.
Again, it's funny how many steps you're going over here that,
pause,
in my opinion, people should be doing these things in their normal lives anyway, in my opinion.
Absolutely, yeah. And that comes back to me saying, you don't have to be an addict to work the 12 steps.
No, everything he said so far seems like something to me that everybody should be included in their life.
And that's why I wanted to go over this, because it's like, people don't know that. People are like, oh, that's for drug addicts. Like, yeah, it was made for drug addicts, but, like, it's for anybody with emotional turmoil. Even if like your life's not unmanageable, if you can't fucking manage your emotions, it'll fucking help you do that. If you can't manage fucking life, this can help you manage your life.
All right. Well, we got what? We've done 10 steps. Hold on. We got 2 steps. We got 2 steps to go left. But we are going to take a brief intermission before we get to the final 2 steps. So please enjoy this brief advertisement from JDEDESIGNz. And we will be right back. For us, it'll be 15 minutes. For you, it'll be 15 seconds. Okay, we are back from our very brief intermission. For us, it was closer to 15 minutes. For you, it was only 15 seconds. And we're here with Wise Joe, and he's going through the 12 steps. So that's where we're going to pick right up and continue. We were on step 11, I believe.
10, yes. We just cleared step 10. It's about acceptance and continuing to take personal inventory, admitting when you're wrong promptly, and I went into how I developed it really quickly. And it was like a natural thing because of how I could feel my emotions then. And not everybody's gonna have that, but it is something that you'll learn by then and develop. So
step 11.
Step 11, we'll develop knowledge. So you sought out through prayer and meditation to improve your conscious contact with your God or your higher powers. You understood him. Praying only for knowledge of the will for your life and the power to carry it out. And never you don't ever want to pray for things. It's not like you want to pray for the will to carry out your life in a sense. You just want the knowledge. It's not like knowledge doesn't come from necessarily information is what it's saying, whereas it comes from the faith of understanding that everything's going to play out the way it plays out. Yeah, with God or nature, karma, whatever you know, whatever you're believing in, you just develop this faith that things are just going to work out the way that they're supposed to work out, and you develop this acceptance that you have gotten from the previous steps, which allows you then to be more calm and go through your life without so much emotional turmoil.
When things happen that are out of your control, I think is what you're referring to specifically.
Because everything's out of your control. So life is just going to happen, and then you start developing the control over your reaction and how you're living at this point.
Yes.
And then you're able to be a lot more, we'll say, emotionally successful, because you're able to then cope and deal with your emotions and situations without getting high and destroying your life.
Yes. So if I can break that down a little bit here, so step 11 is about other than the previous steps are about your own personal. Some of the other steps are about your own personal responsibility.
Yeah.
Step 11 is admitting that there is a higher power and that you don't have control over everything. Is that right?
Yeah.
Did I say that? Is that about right? Say it again. Read step 11 again for us.
We sought out through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry it out.
Yes. So,
the power to it. Basically, that's the power or the power to accept that life is just going to happen. And
that you can't control everything.
And that you can control everything.
Other than yourself and your own reactions to things.
Yes.
Because you do have, everybody does have self-determination. You do decide things for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Free will. But of course, yes. But even if you decide something, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work out. Things happen. So that's what step 11 is about.
Yeah.
It's about you taking responsibility for yourself and making decisions, but understanding that not everything that you try or plan is going to work out. That God is ultimately in control of the whole universe.
Got to just accept that,
and then
remain calm.
Yes, exactly. All right, excellent.
So, and then we get into 12. This is where you develop the principle of service. Now, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to addicts and to practice these principles in all our affairs. And that's where it comes to life. This is a point where you're living the principles and you're practicing your coping mechanisms. You're living the program in a sense. You're accepting. You have faith that things are just going to work out the way they're supposed to work out, and then you follow through.
if I could put it just a little bit simpler, it is basically letting God take control.
Yes. Let go and let God, basically.
Yes.
And there's a lot of fucking cliches like that in the program. So just accept them because they're going to be saying them nonstop.
Yeah. And
all
yes,
day, every
and
day. One
there's
step
a lot
at
of cliches.
Time,
yep.
Just for today.
But that's true, though.
Yeah,
just
but they
because
are
they're
true.
cliches,
Yeah, they're
it doesn't,
true
it doesn't,
cliches.
Yeah, it doesn't...
They
yeah,
do
I don't even
apply
like
to
the
life.
word. I don't even like the word cliche. I don't like that word at all.
It's
because
a category of fucking.
I guess,
of
but
language.
But it's true though. That's why people say cliche, and then they dismiss it. But the things that you're going to hear repeatedly in the program, if you watching this and you've made a decision to get into it as a result of the information that Joe has shared with us, then that's great. Then that's great. And I don't know exactly where I was going with that train of thought, so we're just going to end it with that's
good.
great. That's good. That's good.
Yes. So basically, those are the 12 steps, and if you're ever in the program and you hear somebody talking about 13 steps or the 13th step, it's not a real thing. It just means that you sleep with a girl in the program within your first year, which is not a good fucking thing. Don't have relationships for the first year. It's not smart. Relationships are complicated. They're messy. It's way too emotionally stressful for somebody who's trying to not use drugs to have an emotional relationship with a person.
Let's talk about that for a second. Let's stay on this one for a second. The unwritten 13th rule episode.
13th episode.
The 13th step. The 13th step. So that's about not having relationship with anybody is what it's talking about. Like in the first year or so, until you're comfortable.
Like you can develop new friendships.
But that's okay. But we're talking about like romantic, intimate relationships.
Yes, intimate and romantic relationships.
Yes, don't have that for the first year, or at least until you're feeling confident in yourself and you're comfortable with yourself.
When you love yourself.
Something that I always say to some of my friends and stuff who have had problems with relationships, and some people I know have bounced from relationship to relationship. And the thing is that if you're not comfortable or confident with yourself, you're not going to be that way with somebody else.
Exactly.
You're not going to find that in somebody else. You have to find it within yourself first, and then you'll be able to be with somebody else. But until you have yourself down, you can't. Bringing somebody else into it is just going to complicate things for you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a very important step.
Absolutely.
And it's also I believe that step also refers to that you shouldn't get involved with newcomers, older people who have been in the program, men or women who have been in the program for years should not be getting into relationships with
people with less than a year.
With people with less than a year, and really even possibly after that.
Yeah,
I mean, the year is just a general guideline.
Exactly.
It's really all about you. When you feel comfortable, if it takes you longer than a year, then take your time. You have to focus on yourself. You have to be okay to live by yourself, for yourself. If you can't do that, you're never going to be able to do it with or for someone else. Yep. So
live for you.
Yeah, live for you. That's the way it is. And it does sound selfish, but it's important. We are supposed to be selfish. You
need to remain independent as well.
Even
after the fact, whenever you do become emotionally involved with somebody, you have to still remain independent and be the person that you are and live your life. But then when you come together, you're supposed to share that life. It's not meant to be like depending on each other for everything. We do things together, create a life together, but our lives aren't that. That's not the only definition. Like, you live your own separate lives.
Yeah, when you get married to someone,
together.
When you get married to someone, your lives become joined.
Yes.
But not necessarily
combined.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's the right word. Yes. It's not. They don't come combined. They become joined.
Exactly.
So
you're building a business and working together and being married and depending on each other for absolutely everything. That's not healthy. It's not.
No, it's definitely not.
You need your own life, your own time. You come together, you share that life and time, and then go about your life and continue. And then if that person is the person that you love and you're going to be with, you come home to them. And
I think that's something important too that we can just touch on briefly is that if you're getting into a relationship with someone, I think that you should be thinking about the long term. Even when you've just met someone, even in the short term, you got to be thinking: is this someone who I can be with 10 years from now? That's an important question to ask yourself. Otherwise, what the fuck is the point? You can't just be with someone to be with someone. Eventually, you're both going to become miserable, and that is just one of the many avenues where addiction can be born.
Exactly, for sure. It develops through relationships. It develops through emotional turmoil. Like that's the thing. It's dealing with your emotions, like not in your situations, but your situations create emotions.
Yes.
And if you can't deal with those properly and you're an addict, the only thing you know what to do is to
go get high. Exactly. And that's what recovery is about. It's about finding other tools to deal with those emotions and the things that drove you to using.
Yeah, and that leads right into this little excerpt that, like, the sooner that you face your problems within your society and your everyday living, like, just that much faster you become acceptable, responsible, and a productive member of said society. So, like, the sooner that you get into facing those emotions and feelings and working the steps and going through it and getting back to living a life, and like, you don't even have to call it this, but living a life based off spiritual principles, but living a life based off of
any principles is good.
Principles, I mean, being responsible.
Life without principles is not really.
Yeah,
life without principles is not really a life. You need to have some kind of principles, some kind of rules or guidelines to govern your life. Everybody needs that. And I'm not talking about from the federal government.
Yeah, for sure. Now, there's a whole set of traditions which are, like, based off of being in meetings and stuff like that. I'm just going to run over these really quick, because there's 12 traditions as well. But these aren't necessarily practiced by someone doing the 12 steps. This is something that, like, is just learned by being in the program and attending meetings. And then when you finish your 12 steps, if you're in meetings all the time, this is the fucking traditions that they follow. So in a room, in a Narcotics Anonymous room, our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends on NA unity. And 2, for our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern, which means, like, people who are in the meetings and, like, setting them up or running them, they're not in charge. Nobody's in charge. The only person in charge is your higher power. Yeah. Everybody is just doing this to create unity and help people community and have people find recovery, get off drugs. 3, the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop using. And that's an important thing. Like, you don't have to pay for anything. There's no dues, fees.
You just want to have to stop.
Yeah, you just have to have a desire to not fucking be living a life of addiction. And number 4 is each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or NA as a whole. Whereas that means, like,
the individual meeting.
Yeah, the meeting is not, like, out there. Like, there's no list of people who are there. There's no way. Like, it's anonymous. Everybody is autonomous, including the group itself.
The person
outside the group, the group doesn't exist unless you're talking to another NA group. Then the group exists.
Yeah.
Because then you can come together and then you create things like conventions and shit. And when I was in California, I went to the original NA convention. I don't remember the name of it, but it was huge. It was pretty cool. Like, it was really intense. It was pretty wild. So 5 is that each group has but one primary purpose: to carry the message to the addict who still suffers. 6 is an NA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the NA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, or prestige divert us from our primary purpose. And that's why I made it very clear that we are not associated or affiliated with the program. It is anonymous. This is not a financial gain. This is not like an outside enterprise to be taking NA. This is just information to get people who are in addiction or anybody who's interested in understanding what the steps are or what they're about, how they work, and why, if you aren't an addict, you could work them and have a much more productive emotional state in your life. 7 is that every NA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions, which means the meetings all operate off of whatever donations and shit that they get there. And they just keep operating. Usually it's funded by the people who are running it. It's always funded by the people who are running it. There's no organization funding meetings for NA. There's nothing like that. Like I said, they're autonomous between each other, and there's no governing state in this program. Narcotics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. There might be, like, counselors and shit like that, but there's not, like, like I said,
a president or a vice president.
There's no corporate structure. There's no entity above whatever the meeting is. 9 is that NA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. Okay, I'm not entirely sure what that fucking means.
Read it again.
So, NA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve.
Okay. So what that means is that that NA is not an organization as a whole, but a group of meetings or an area or a community could come together to make a board for such things, possibly as fundraisers or events for other people.
Okay.
That to me is that there's no organizing body above the meeting. The meeting is the meeting. But multiple meetings or a community can come together to create a board to oversee such things.
Responsible for things that they serve.
Yes.
Helping addicts
or
events.
All
events.
That kind of
shit. Events.
Yeah, hiring counselors.
Okay.
Maybe you would need to put together a group if a group of meetings in the area is going to hire a professional counselor or something. They would get together and create a board to decide who is going to be that counselor, for example.
Yeah, true that. Okay. See, I've been practicing these principles, and I haven't been to meetings in a long time, but some things I don't understand. It's a large fucking thing. It's a lifelong journey. And
absolutely.
You can continue to learn as you go through. And that's another reason why, I go through, I wanted to do this episode. There's still stuff that I want to learn. I'm doing my steps over again right now. I just started them, 2 weeks ago, and I'm on my 6th step, but I'm going through it, and I don't have a sponsor, so I'm writing down all the information, but then I'm going to be stuck, so then I'm going to have to go to a meeting and find a sponsor, and it's nice to get a refresher as to what it was, because I was in the program for a very long time, and then I started practicing my principles, and I went on life, and now I don't need to go to meetings all the time,
no.
I just feel like I probably should. It's been a long time.
Yeah, that's good. You're going to go get a refresher.
I'm working my steps again. It's something to go over. So my first steps, like I said, we go through the inventory. That was 22 years of inventory that I did. I got 26 years worth of inventory this time. That's more. And then it's more that you think about, because you then can go over and you'll remember different things. It's good to work the steps more than once. It's important that you do, as to not lose the information and the practices that you have. And 10, Narcotics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the NA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. They don't support other organizations. They don't give their name away. They don't let the name be used for things that aren't NA related.
Yeah.
Our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. So, no press, no films. Don't have cameras. You're not supposed to be recording there. It's basically they don't affiliate with other people.
Yeah.
But they could create, same idea where they create a board for committees. They could create something let's say TV show, for example, or something like that. They could come together, create a board, and then decide that they want to do it, and then ask people, and then use the NA name. But they won't. It'll still be anonymous.
Yeah, that to me is probably going to require more than just, that's going to require people who are, the NA as an organization would have to make that decision.
Yeah. But as there is no actual organization,
there's no
above
governing
NA,
body. That's probably why it was designed that way, to prevent it from becoming, that's why you're not going to see a TV show or a radio show
that's why
or anything like that.
And that's the thing, it's not going to expose people. It's basically the thing. It's not going to be you go there, it's anonymous.
It's anonymous, yeah. You're not
people, nobody knows.
No radio, no TV, there's no press. It's completely anonymous and...
Yes. And 12, we'll get back to that. Anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities. So, understanding that everyone is anonymous is important. Can't go around sharing, telling everybody about everything. People aren't going around doing that to you. It's anonymous. And placing your principles before personalities is a big thing. That's stop and react. Stop and think about it before you react. Everybody is fucking the same. We're all trying to get through. Because someone's personality you don't like, you just follow your principles, and you won't treat them like shit because you don't like them, because you've learned how to not do such thing.
Yeah.
Now we're gonna move on to this next step here. We're about to be finishing this up here shortly. We're gonna go into the recovery and relapse, right? So they say that relapse is a part of recovery, which it kind of is for some people, but it's on an individual basis. Some people don't fucking relapse. But in the beginning, when you're trying to not use drugs, that's when a lot of the relapse happens. Like, before you go to treatment, like, that's where I was. That's the only relapse that I've, like, had in that sense. Where, like, before I was going to rehab, I was trying to not do it. And then, like, I would go a period of time not doing it and then do it. So, like, that's a relapse. Then I went to treatment, and I started learning the principles, and then I've come this far. Now I don't want to pick up, but sometimes I still have the urge, and I gotta fucking reach out and talk about it.
Yeah.
And, like, I've had those urges and have had to reach out to people and shit over the past few months. And now that's why I'm working my 12 steps again. So, like, that's the thing. It's about coming back to it and following it and just remembering that it's part of, like, who you are at that point. If you fucking want to, like, follow these principles, they'll help you. Like, if you do follow them, even if you don't want to follow them, if you do it, they'll help you. So in recovery and relapse, like, it's part of it, but they consider a relapse a sign of complete failure and long periods of abstinence a sign of complete success. We in the recovery program of Narcotics Anonymous have found that this perception is too simplistic. After a member has had some involvement in our fellowship, a relapse may be the jarring experience that brings about a more rigorous application of the program. By the same token, we have observed some members who remain abstinent for long periods of time, whose dishonesty and self-deceit still prevent them from enjoying complete recovery and acceptance within society. Complete and continuous abstinence, however, in close association and identification with others in NA groups, is still the best ground for growth. Although all addicts are basically the same in kind, we do, as individuals, differ in degree of sickness and rate of recovery. So basically, like, when they say that relapse is part of recovery, it's not necessarily always that you go back to drugs. It's not always that, because you can have emotional relapses and have situations that make you react in a certain way that you might not go pick up and use, but you still acted on a character defect and have shortcomings that you're trying to deal with. And then that brings you to a point of emotional relapse, which is what they say, a jarring experience that brings you back to a stronger application of the program.
Yeah.
So even though I didn't go and get high, I still had an emotional relapse, which brought me back to working the steps.
Yeah.
And, like, to realize that is, like, a huge thing.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like, I have time, but even people with time can just go out.
Yeah.
You can go right back to it.
Yeah.
Not even an issue. And, like, I mean, I could have just, bam, right back out. But because I've learned through these principles and I've relied on living my life this way and following, like, the understanding that I'm fucking just basic person. I mean, I don't want to say I'm basic. Fuck that. But I'm just a regular person, just like everybody else. That's brought me to this understanding, like, oh, I was like, fuck. And I'm like, my perception is way different than most people's. Yeah. Like, I see things way differently, like, than most people do. So when a situation arises, I had already had a different understanding of how to react and how to, like, perceive everything. So then I come in and I start applying the spiritual principles, which give me this, like, moral ground to practice my ethics, which, like, so basically, whereas my morals are like this rule book for things that are okay and not okay, and then my ethics that I can practice are following those rules. Like, the things that I do based off of those beliefs and understandings. Yeah. And those spiritual principles are what developed and created the structure of my moral ground. Now I follow through with what I've learned and practice my coping mechanisms. My attitude towards people is better and different. Some days it's not. I mean, I'm a person.
Everybody sins. Everybody has shortcomings and makes mistakes. You're never going to be. No one's going to be perfect.
And, like, I think a large portion of what my issue has been recently is, like, my faltering of faith, where, like, my lack of faith recently has probably been my ultimate shortcoming, where it's like, I don't know what the fuck to believe now, where it's like, I follow, like, the word of Christ and Christianity. Now I've come to this point where it's like a basic agnosticism, where I'm like, I don't know that that's fucking entirely true. Like, and that's a normal thing for Christians. Faith falters, comes and goes.
Sometimes.
It's not always 100% persistent. Even the most faithful followers of Christ have lost their way and come back.
Absolutely, certainly.
And, like, because of that, like, I don't know what my higher power is. And without the higher power, where's my faith go?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I have faith in myself, but that's not enough. Like, that's holding on to the edge of my seat, like, gritting my teeth. Like, I got faith in myself, but how long can I be having faith in myself? So going back into the steps, I had to decide and figure out what higher power I could try to rely on and see what would work.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I'm at, where, like, that higher power I've been using is like karma, because even through Christianity, like, karma's that's like the energy of everything, which was to be the God.
I mean,
karma, that's the agnosticism thing that I'm talking about, where it's like, I believe in the higher power, and I believe that there's, like, a God at this point, but, like, I had faltered so far that I'm, like, almost atheistic, when I'm like, nah, shit's fucking fake. And, like, I got to that point where I'm like, what? And then I'm thinking, because I know better than that, I'm like, no way. Like, even if there's not, like, a Christian or Judeo-Christian God or setup, the energy of everything and, like, the way karma works, and, like, from what I see, what I feel, what I've experienced, like, that flow of energy is fucking way greater than me. I don't have control over any of that shit. Like, so I can put my faith there for the time being until I, like, find my way back or find my way to wherever I'm going.
Yeah.
So that's been a large, like, grasp. Like, that's basically the emotional relapse that I had had, where I was like, I don't think there's fucking God at all. Like,
yeah.
So, like, it's jarring to be like, I have my faith, and I know this, and then time just goes on and just slowly falters until I come to this point where, like, I wasn't realizing it, and all of a sudden it's like, bam, like, oh my God, I'm like, I don't fucking believe in God anymore. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, what just happened? Like, how did this, like, where did it go? Like, what the fuck was that? And then I'm like, oh fuck. And then other things happen, like, just everyday shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's fucking annoying, but it's life. And
Yeah.
dealing with life is basically what this book is telling you to do. Like, you have to confront life and your feelings and figure yourself out to go through life in, like, in a happier state.
I would recommend you watch the next episode that I had with Gavin Sr., because I'm hoping to have him on, and we're going to talk about the prophecies that were told in the Bible that have come true already.
Yes,
actually.
And that's what I'm, like, because I know all that stuff. So
yeah,
like, that's what the problem
that's what
is.
I'm saying.
I just need to, same deal. I know all this stuff.
Yeah. Sometimes you just need a refresher, though. Sometimes you just got to get back into it. You need a refresher. That's the way it is.
So I'm having two simultaneous relapses, emotional and spiritually. So, like, that's where I'm at in a weird place.
Well, but you recognized it.
And I'll be attending meetings around the area. I don't know if anybody's an addict or in recovery who's at meetings, who sees me there, you watch this, say something.
Also, I mean, but you recognized it, too. You recognized that you were starting to falter, and you took action right away to try and correct it.
Exactly. And that's the thing, like, like, the next episode, that's one of the things I got to talk about. Like, I have to talk about myself. So
in part 2.
Yeah, and that's not like a fucking narcissistic thing where it's like, I have to talk about me.
No.
Because it's about me. But my recovery is about me, and sharing my recovery with suffering addicts and addicts is... Like,
that will maybe help somebody else.
That's a strong way to possibly help someone. It helps me. Like, I'm doing it for me because I know that the platform that we're releasing this on can reach a lot of people. And we don't have, like, a shitload of views, not like hundreds and thousands of people.
No, we're certainly not there yet. But
we do have people that watch it, and I'm hoping that maybe somebody watches it, learns a little bit about the program, and realizes that it's not like some fucked up thing or some cult.
Yeah.
It's a place you can go and start to develop tools to deal with your life and deal with it in a proper way, not doing drugs, like deal with it in a
drinking.
way, and drugs or drinking, no substance, like not relying on substances to make you live
or to make you happy,
where you can use your own mind, your own tools to be happy.
Yep. Because it's all, a lot of it's about perception. You have to
exactly, perception and faith.
Yep.
You have to have the attitude to like not be a fucking piece of shit. Basically,
Yep.
Don't be a piece of shit.
Do you have something else you wanted to get to?
No, that would be that's all we're gonna cover on that book right now. That's the program. That's the 12 steps.
All right.
But like I think I might read something here for the people. This is not something that I wrote, but I will read something after that I did write. This is a story called "This Is Water." I originally heard it from David Foster Wallace before he had unfortunately committed suicide. He had done a college. What's it called when people graduate from college? They go to the speech.
Valedictorian?
No. It was like a lecture basically.
Oh, you're talking about like a somebody who went to a graduation and was like a guest speaker or something like that.
Yes, he was the guest speaker at college, and he told this story. So it's like a really strong story basically, but it's really simple, and it's about being aware. So like, it's called "This Is Water," right? There's these two fish swimming along, and they happen to meet an older fish swimming by, who nods at them and says, "Good morning, boys. How's the water?" The two young fish swim on for a bit, and then eventually one of them looks over at the other and goes, "What the fuck is water?" The point of the story is merely that the most obvious and important realities are often the ones that are hardest to see and talk about. Stated, this is just a banal platitude. The fact is that banal platitudes have a life or death importance, and understanding what you are experiencing through life and being aware of it is everything. So if you're not present in the moment and understanding your constant situation rather than always being in your head thinking about what happened or what's gonna happen, or constantly being afraid of the outcomes or scenarios that may play out, you can't live. And having faith in something greater than you and following these spiritual principles is what gives you the strength and the courage to just go and do.
To continue.
Because you accept. You accept and you're aware. You take your perception, and that's where your perception really changes. Because you go from this point of just being like in your head, and you're like, oh no, it's about me, what the fuck? And then you start understanding and being aware of your situation, your fucking scenarios, everything surrounding you, and it is still about you. It's still about you, because that's the only thing you can control. But now you're in this place where you can go through life and enjoy it, because you have the faith that that's just how it's supposed to be.
What are you looking for?
There's somebody outside.
Oh.
We need to block off the windows next time. Okay, so like that was a little story I got from David Foster Wallace, and then I wrote like a little fucking like a thing that's based off of the program while I was in it, because there's a lot of like things in the program, like people are people. So sometimes there's hate. Sometimes
Certainly.
there's hate and shit. And people aren't always nice to each other. Sometimes it's cliquey. You gotta find the right meetings to attend.
It's just like with anything. I mean, people are people.
Exactly.
People
You gotta
are people,
find the people who are
and the people
be
who
your
are in
people.
recovery are almost at their base form trying to relearn so many different things,
Exactly.
emotions, and how to deal with things. So you really, the people, especially, you just get back to that kind of base instinct, the base human instinct. You know what I mean? And I imagine that's pretty prevalent because of the circumstances and the situation of becoming clean.
Yeah, so based off of that, I wrote this. It's about attitudes. So like it starts out the same way as the ending, right? So the most obvious and important realities are often the hardest to see and talk about. And to observe these and confront them is something that's even harder to perceive. And in order to do so requires courage, which simply takes an extreme faith in your higher power. No matter the case, analyzing these realities is simple and once observed, but changing them in everyday life takes much more than ourselves, as some of us know. The reality is that to become aware of these almost instant negative reactions to simple issues is only the beginning of the process to changing your everyday emotional reaction. The next part is where your courage takes place, which simply put is to face difficult decisions, but unsimply, we must be aware that we are not the only person that matters. Must face the reality that the sun does not revolve around us, and our lives are only as important as the next person. Now becoming complacent and ignoring these obvious realities is a death sentence. As some of us are addicts and don't realize that that could be a trigger to send us back down a rabbit hole. But we know that putting others on a different level can have drastic consequences. It's time to realize that we are equal, addict and non-addict alike, whether it's a newcomer or an old comer, somebody who's clean or sober, everyone is equal. The way to deal with these obvious realities is simple, but extremely difficult. We must stop, use patience, and be willing to accept the situation for what it is. Be open-minded to the fact that this is just the way it's supposed to play out, and that life isn't all about us. Life isn't all about you or me. It's about us, because we simply have the power to succeed. So stay aware of life and stay aware of life in itself, because the choice of emotion is a subconscious decision that we must train or learn how to make.
Sounds good.
Fucked it up a few times.
Well, it happens.
I mean, I wrote it a long ass time ago.
Yeah,
but like,
good knowledge to take forth.
Yeah, like I watched that excerpt or that video, like of David Foster Wallace, This Is Water story, and I loved it. Like, it changed my perception hearing that story and understanding it, because it was so simple. Like, anybody could understand that.
Yeah. And
then based off of like the way he explained it, I was like, oh, okay. I just thought about it, and basically just like, okay, I was like, this is what I get from it, and then I wrote that. So, yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to go out. So,
all right, well, then that's where we're going to end part 1. Make sure you keep an eye out for part 2. That'll be up in the next few days or week or two perhaps. But Bombs, tell them about if you want to see Bombs, if you are in the Carlisle area of Pennsylvania and you want to stop in to see Bombs or help his pizza shop. It's not his; he doesn't own it, but he works there. He's a prominent member of the team. Joe, tell everybody where they can
get the best pizza in Cumberland County. All right, you guys come down to Seve-N-Dots Pizza, 40 East Louther Street, Carlisle, Pennsylvania, 17013. We got the best pizza in Cumberland County. We make delicious subs. We make everything with love. Come on down, get yourself
phone number,
cheesesteak, pizza, garlic naan.
You deliver or no deliveries?
We do not deliver.
No deliveries.
Pick up only, and we do have dine-in. So come sit down and enjoy your food.
Pick up and dine in for the people who are out there looking for things to do.
Our phone number is 717-249-0333.
Excellent. And also make sure you check out, if you like the podcast, and if you like the podcast, you want to support it, go to, you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/The Boiling Point Podcast. I have links to everything on that. If you like clothing, like the white JDEDESIGNz t-shirt that I usually see me in when I'm doing a podcast, go to bonfire.com/JDEDESIGNz apparel. Please keep in mind that JDEDESIGNz is spelled with a Z at the end, not an S. If you want the black t-shirts, go to bonfire.com/JDEDESIGNz apparel 2. And then, of course, we also have the mug, the coffee mug. And the link will be provided in the description as well as on Facebook. So please check that out. Buy something. You can also check out facebook.com/JDEDESIGNz for my personal artwork. You can buy a poster. All of that will go to help support me and the podcasts if you enjoy it. And we'll have Bombs on part 2 very soon. And
you can find me on Instagram.
Oh, go ahead.
Joey Powder, Wise Joe. Facebook, Wise Joe, or on Twitter at Dr. Bombs, Wise Joe. That's me.
Yep, that's where you can find Bombs. I forgot that he's all over social media. Most of the guests don't really have a social media presence, but
Joey Bombs,
but Dr.
Joey
Bombs,
Powder,
Dr. Bombs, FMD,
Bombsy, Dr. Bombs with the FMD.
He is on social media.
You can follow me.
Look him up. He also hypes and promotes the show. We also take pictures, and he posts a lot of the pictures that we take behind the scenes here at the podcast. So that's where you're going to see some of those.
All the pizza shop action is on the Instagram page.
And drop a comment if you like the show's new backdrop. the beach
We're gonna get a bigger one
of the backdrop. Certainly, we're definitely going to get a bigger one, but this is a start. We're very low budget around here.
For the moment.
But that's how everybody has started. Thanks for tuning in. Later on tonight, probably tomorrow, I'll be having an episode with Gavin Jr. posted again. He'll be on the show tonight. I'll have that posted tomorrow. And then, of course, in the next few days or maybe a week or two, look for the part 2 of the bomb special. Part 2, what are we calling part 2?
Next episode will be my lost love and addiction.
His lost love and addiction.
It'll be a little story about my personal experience with addiction. You won't get it all. If you know me, you won't get it all because I don't tell people shit.
Just
I'll tell you all about it, but there's things I don't tell people just because it's not like that, and that's the way it's supposed to be.
Exactly.
With the program. There's
Not everything
things
is
that you
public.
tell your sponsor. There's things that you keep to yourself.
Yep.
You only share it with your sponsor.
Make sure you like, comment, share this episode out. Make sure everybody can see it, especially since it's an important episode. There's information that there's people out there that can use the information that we have given to help themselves, perhaps.
Hold on.
So please like, comment, and share on the
program
episode.
real quick.
And what are you looking up?
The Narcotics Anonymous hotline shit.
Oh, okay. Bomb's going to look up some numbers for us real quick before we end. And make sure you check out some of the other episodes. This is episode 13. There are 12 other episodes. So if you enjoyed this one, go check out some of the other ones. This is Wise Joe's third appearance on the show. He's got 2 other appearances that I strongly recommend you check out. They're very good episodes. I personally think that this is going to be one of the front runners for the most popular episode. I think 2 to 3 weeks time. This episode is going to be a front runner. I think.
If you're in the central Pennsylvania area and you are looking for treatment or any type of help with drug addiction, you can call the Narcotics Anonymous Center in Harrisburg, 717-233-3733. And yeah, there's meetings all over town.
Yep.
NA.org is the Narcotics Anonymous official website, so you can go there, find your meetings, reach out, find a meeting near you, get clean.
Yep.
Don't die.
Well then, until next time.
Fuck heroin.
Indeed. Until next time then, this is Wise Joe, and I am JD, and we are signing off.